Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about what is Redis cache and why we need to go for Redis cache. When we are developing the application, two types of tables will be available in the database. First one is called transactional tables. Second one is called non-transactional table. Transactional table is nothing but application will perform DML operations. Application will insert the record, update the record, and delete the record in the table. Those are called transactional tables. Non-transactional tables, nothing but application will perform DQL operations only. Nothing but we will only retrieve the records from the table. When the table is static, there is no use of retrieving data from the table again and again. Okay. For static tables, we should use cache, right? Cache nothing but temporary storage. Cache means we need to fetch the data only once from the table from the database, and we need to maintain the data in the cache so that we can reuse the data for the future requests, right? So here if you see, when we are going for registration page display, countries data is required. If you retrieve countries data again and again from the database, so performance will be reduced and the data is same. Why we need to retrieve the data again and again? Okay. Now here, in order to avoid this problem, we are keeping a condition to retrieve the records only one time. Then we will reuse the same data for multiple users to display the drop down. Okay. The advantage with the above logic is we'll fetch the data only once from the database and we will reuse that data. That we can say cache. That cache is a local cache, will be used only within our application. Then if you are going for microservices development, multiple APIs want to use the same data. That's where Redis comes into picture. Redis mainly used for distributed caching. It is mainly used for distributed caching. Okay. Now, distributed caching, nothing but multiple applications can communicate with the same cache to perform the operations. Here, people can use Redis as a database. People can use Redis as a cache. People can use Redis as a message broker also. Right. Now, Redis is not only for the Java projects, guys. Redis is supporting 50 plus languages available in the market. Okay. Redis supporting for 50 plus programming languages available in the market. Java can use Redis, Python, .NET, any programming language can communicate with the Redis for storing their data and retrieving their data. Okay, so we can set up this Redis in two ways. One is download the Redis and install the Redis in your system, which is called on-prem Redis server. And the second one is, if you don't want to install on your system, then you can try with the Redis cloud also, right? So let me go to the Redis cloud and let us see how can we set up our Redis server in the cloud. So go to Redis website. Yeah, so there is an option called try Redis cloud is available. Click on try Redis cloud. So here they are asking to create the account, or you can log in with the Google also. If you already logged in into your Gmail account or GitHub account, then you can use your existing Google account to communicate with the Redis. This is called OAuth security. If you have account in one application, by using that account, you can access another application also. In the Spring Security, we are going to learn this technique. Okay. So I want to use the Redis. I don't want to create the account in the Redis directly, because Redis is offering that you can create a direct account, or you can use your Google account, or you can use your GitHub account to log in into the Redis. Same thing is available in our website also. So if you go to our website, there is an option sign in with Google. If you have a Google account, you can directly access Ashok IT website. You no need to create the direct account in our website. That is called OAuth security we are implementing in the project. Now, I want to log in into this Redis by using my existing Google account. Let us see once again. Go to Redis website. Here there is an option called Try Redis Cloud. Click on Redis Cloud. Here you can directly create the account, or else you can use your Google account, or you can use your GitHub account. Let me use my Google account. It is asking for sign in with the Google account. Okay, so here I'm selecting my email ID, asking for the password to log in. Next. Yeah, sign into Redis. They're asking for confirmation. Okay, continue. Right. So with this, we are able to access redislabs.com. To work with the Redis cloud, we are able to log in into the Redis cloud. We need to set up our database in the Redis cloud now. Right. So here, create your free database in the Redis cloud. Redis cloud is providing the free database by using 3 cloud providers. One is by using AWS. Second one is by using GCP, Google Cloud. Third one is by using Microsoft Azure. Okay. So those are cloud providers to create our free database in the Redis. Now, I'm going to select cloud vendor as Amazon Web Services. In which region you want to create this cloud database. So here you can select, if you are in the India, you can select the region as Mumbai. Asia Pacific, Mumbai region is available in the AWS. I'm selecting that. If you are in the other country, if you are in the US, you can select the nearest region for you. For me, the nearest region I'm selecting as Mumbai. Okay, click on let's start free. So with this, our free Redis database got created. Okay. So once this process is done, that means our database is created in the Redis. Go to the databases. So you can see here, Ashok free DB got created. Okay. Now you can connect to this Redis database also from our Spring Boot application. In order to connect with this Redis database from our Spring Boot application, we need to know some database properties. What is the URL of this database? Okay, what is the username for this database? What is the password for this database? So if you have this information, then by using our boot application, we can communicate with this Redis server. Okay, let me select this database now. So once you go to this database, here, can you read this one, guys? What is this one now? Public endpoint. This is the endpoint of our database. Endpoint nothing but URL. This is the URL of the database. This is the port number of the database. 10332 port number is available. Okay, scroll down. Here, if you see the security, the username by default will be default. User password is also available here. So this is the username, this is the password, and this is the URL is available. By using this information, we can connect with the Redis server. We can use that Redis server as a database. We can store the data and we can retrieve the data from the Redis server. So are you guys able to understand how to set up the database in the Redis now? Simple. We are logged in into redis.com by using our Google account. They are asking to create a free database. We have created. Once the database is created, we are able to check here what are the databases available. Right. So there is one database with a name called Ashok Free Database. By default, whatever the username is available in the Google, same username it has taken and it is created one database for me. So go to this database now. Here if you see the name of the database and the URL of the database is available, and below security configuration the username is available and password is also available. If you want, you can delete the database. If you want to import some existing content into this database, there is a import option also is available. Now if you go to this public endpoint, there is a connect option. If you click on the connect, there are multiple ways available in order to connect with this Redis database. By using Redis Insight, you can connect with this database. By using Redis CLI, you can connect with this database. And by using Redis Client. Suppose if you are using Java application, this is the logic that you can use to connect with this Redis database. How do we connect with that Redis database also? They have given the client logic also here. Multiple ways available to connect with this Redis client. Now, I will connect with the Redis client by using my Spring Boot application. Redis server by using our Spring Boot application. Okay, so we know the URL of the database available in the Redis. We know the password of the database available in the Redis. Okay, good. So now I'm going to create one Spring Boot application. For this Spring Boot application database, which database we are using? Now, which database we are using? We are using Redis database. Where is that Redis available? In the cloud. Redis cloud we are using. Okay, now I'm going to create one repository interface. How do we create that JPA repository? Here also we are going to create one repository. That repository is responsible to communicate with this Redis database to perform all the CRUD operations. Earlier when we call the save method, it communicated with the MySQL database. Now when I call the save method, it will communicate with the Redis database. Okay, repository will be available. I'm taking one REST controller directly here. You can take a service class and you can communicate from controller to service, service to repository also you can do. Okay, now here one entity class also will be available, that is for data representation. Okay, one entity class also will be available. Repository will be talking to the entity and repository will be talking to the database. Along with these things, we need to create one more class that is called Redis config class. What is that class, guys? Redis config class. What is the purpose of this Redis config class? Redis config class will represent where the Redis server is available. Redis config is used to establish the connection with the Redis server. Redis server is available in the cloud. We know the Redis server URL and we know the Redis server username and password also. By using that information, we are going to set up connection with the Redis server. If you want to connect with a normal database, database URL, database username, database password. Now I am not going to connect with the normal database. Now I am going to connect with the Redis database. Are you guys able to follow this? Now, let us create one Spring Boot application. So what components will be available in our Spring Boot application? One class will be available. What is that class? Redis config class will be available. What is the purpose of this Redis config class, guys? What is the purpose of this Redis config class? Redis config class is responsible to establish connection with the Redis server. Okay, Redis server may be available in our local system, may be available in the cloud also. Currently we are using cloud Redis server. Then what is the purpose of this entity and repository? To communicate with the database. Okay, REST controller is available to perform CRUD operations by using HTTP request. We will send the request to REST controller from the postman. My REST controller will communicate with the Redis repository. Repository will be communicating with the Redis database. Are you clear with this one? Good. Now let's go and create that project. File, new, Spring Starter project. Spring Boot Redis DB application. I'm going to create Spring Boot Redis database application. You observe what dependencies. I'm selecting Spring Web dependency to create a REST controller. I'm selecting Spring Boot DevTools dependency to restart the server. Earlier, we have selected one dependency called data JPA. Okay. Earlier, we selected a dependency called data JPA. What is the purpose of data JPA dependency? which is responsible to communicate with a database. So you can communicate with Oracle database or MySQL database. But now we are going to communicate with the Redis database. So what dependency we need to select now? Spring Data Redis we have to select. So if you want to communicate with normal Oracle or MySQL databases, then you need to select Spring Data JPA dependency. If you want to communicate with the Redis database, then you need to select Spring Data Redis dependency. Along with this one, we need to add one more dependency called Redis client dependency. When you select data JPA, database driver also required, either Oracle driver or MySQL driver or H2 driver. Similarly, Redis driver also we have to add, that is called Redis client. Redis client dependency also we need to add, but Redis client dependency we are not getting directly here. We will add it from outside. Okay, click on next. Finish. What are the dependencies I have selected now? Three dependencies I have selected now. Three dependencies I have selected. One is Data Redis, Web Starter, and DevTools. But those are sufficient or not sufficient? Not sufficient. What is required? What is required? Redis client dependency is also required. Already I have committed this project to my GitHub, guys. Spring Boot Redis Cloud Database application is available. 2 days back only I have committed this project. Go to this pom.xml. Here there is one more dependency available, which is Redis clients, redis.clients, Jedis dependency is available. Go to our pom.xml and add this client dependency also. If this client dependency not available, then our application may not be able to communicate with the Redis database. Are you clear? Good. Fine. Next one, we need to create one more important class in the project, that is called Redis config. What is the purpose of the Redis config here? Which is responsible to establish connection with the Redis server. Okay, so let me create a class with a name called Redis config dot config. Redis config will be available. Let's represent this class as a configuration class. We are going to represent this Java class as a configuration class. What is the main purpose of this class? To return JD's connection factory bean, we need to tell what is the username, what is the URL, and what is the password of our application. Okay, fine. So see here the code that is available in the config. Redis config is available. So this is one method that we are going to write. This method is going to return JD's connection factory bean. You can take any name for the method. That method is returning JD's connection factory bean. So here we need to specify our endpoint URL and our port number of the database. Here we need to specify username of our database and password of our database. Okay, where we can get this username and password, guys? From where we are going to get this username and password? JD's connection factory. Why there is a error here? Client dependency added. Did I save it? Maven update. Yeah, fine. Now let me take my database information copy this database URL, public endpoint, give this endpoint URL. What is the port number, guys? 10332 is the port number. Let us configure that port number there. What is the username by default? It is the default. Password is available. Come down. Take this password, copy this password, and keep that password here. That's it. So we are creating Redis standalone configuration class. For that class, we are giving two parameters. One is host name, another one is port number. Host name nothing but the endpoint of the database URL. Port number, on which port number the database is running. Then we are setting the username and password. Then client configuration we are creating. With this configuration and client configuration, we are creating JD's connection factory. What is the meaning of that JD's connection factory? JD's connection factory is responsible to establish the communication with the Redis server. Are you clear? Good. Now let's go and create our normal entity class and repository interface. So let us create new class. I'm taking one class with a name called student. This one is my entity class. I'm taking two variables, private integer ID, private string name. Okay. Let us generate setters and getters for these variables. Now here, earlier we used to write one annotation called @entity annotation. But is it required now? Is it going to communicate with Oracle MySQL databases? No. It will communicate with what? Redis. So in the Redis, data will be stored in the form of key and value. So to represent that key, here I'm going to use one annotation called Redis hash annotation. Redis hash annotation, I'm going to specify the hash name as a student hash. Nothing but student hash is the key which is used to store the student records in the Redis database. So earlier we will specify @entity annotation, @ table annotations, @ID annotations and all. But now here this class we are using to store data in the Redis server. Redis server will store the data in the form of key and value. Here Redis hash name I am giving as a student hash. That is the key. Now, so with this our entity class is ready. Then create one REST controller. New class. I'm creating a REST controller with a name called student REST controller. So inside this student REST controller, let us take one annotation called @REST controller annotation. Let us inject our, repository should be created first. I need to create one repository, new interface, repo. Let's go and select student repository. This student repository should perform operations on the Redis database, CRUD operations. So to perform the CRUD operations, we are extending the properties from CRUD repository. So when you go for data JPA also, CRUD repository, JPA repository available. When you go for Redis database also, the CRUD repository is available. Extend from the CRUD repository. What is the entity for this one? Student. What is the ID? Primary key ID, integer. Okay, this is the repository which is responsible to perform our operations. Now, so entity class is available, Redis entity is available, and Redis repository is also available. Redis repository nothing but it is a data repository from the Spring only to perform CRUD operations. So earlier when we call the methods of the repository, it performed operations with the database. Now if I call the methods of the repository, it will perform the operations in the Redis server. It is not going to communicate with the real database now. It is going to communicate with the Redis database now. Good. So let me create REST controller, new class, student rest controller. I'm keeping this inside a package called rest finish. Let's make this class as a rest controller by using a annotation called @rest controller. Now, let's inject our repository into our rest controller. Private student repository, let's perform auto wiring. Student repository, let's perform auto wiring. Now, first let me write one post method to create the student record. Okay, public string add student. Okay, how do we get the student data? Student data we are going to get as a request body. Let's take it as a post mapping slash student. Post mapping slash student. How do we read the data from the request body? By using @request body annotation. By using @request body annotation. So what we need to do? Repository dot save of our student. Student record we are saving. Return student saved. Return student saved. So this is the response we are giving. Now, from the postman, we can send a post request with the student data in the request body in the JSON format. Then my REST controller is calling the repository method. Now, where this repository should save the record? Is it going to save in the normal Oracle MySQL database, or it will save in the Redis database now? It is going to save in the Redis database now. Are you clear? Now, similarly, let me write one more method. Public list of student get all students. Get all students. Return yes repository dot find all. What is the meaning of a find all? What is the meaning of find all, guys? So it is going to return all the students available in the database. So let's go for get mapping slash students. So I have taken two methods here. One is for creating the student by using post method. Another one is to retrieve the students by using get method. That's it. So with this, our Spring Boot application is ready to perform operations with the Redis database. Done. Let us refresh our application. Maven, update the project. Force update. Okay. Right click, run as boot application. Clear the console. Yeah, 8080 port number already in use, so we cannot run on that. Let's go with another port number, server.port. You can give different value. So we are giving it as 9090. Maven update. Refresh. Run as boot application. Now, with this, we are able to start our application. Okay, we are able to start our application. Good. Go to Postman. Go to Postman. Get request localhost colon 9090 slash students. Now I'm sending a get request with the slash students URL pattern. Am I getting any data? No. Why? Currently the data is not available. Empty array we are getting. Now let us make one post request. Send a post request localhost colon 9090 student body in which format? JSON format. That is the default for the REST API. So let us take the JSON key ID 101 and the name I have taken. Okay, so you can give the data in the form of JSON, and you make sure when you are sending the JSON data, whenever you are sending the JSON data, that JSON data should be mapped to our Java object. We are sending post request for this method. This method is expecting student data in the request body. So whatever the JSON that we are sending in the request body, that JSON data should be mapped to this Java object. So that's why the variable names of this class should match with the keys in the JSON. JSON also will represent data in the key value. Whatever the keys we are using in the JSON, those keys should match with the variables in our class. Then only that Jackson API can map our JSON data to Java object. Okay, good. Fine. We are sending post request with a JSON data in the request body. What is the logic available in the REST controller post request method? Repository.save. What is this repository? CRUD repository. This is a Spring data repository. Now, this Spring data repository will connect with the MySQL database, or it will connect with the Redis database. How it will connect with the Redis database? Already we have done the Redis factory configuration in our application. So with this configuration, it will choose Redis as a database to store, to perform the data operations. If you don't have the Redis connection factory, then it will check for the real data source. Here the data source is not available. Data JPI is not available. Spring data Redis is available. Redis connection factory bean is available, which will establish the connection with the Redis database. Perfect. Now, go to the Postman, click on send. Now, what is the response we got? Student saved. Where it saved? In the Redis database. Okay. Now go and send a get request. Click on send. Now, are we able to retrieve the student which is available in the Redis database? So if you are able to get this data, that means it is already maintaining our data. Let me send one more post request body with a 102 with some John, something like this. Click on send. Another student record is saved. Now go to the get request and click on send. Then what happened? Earlier student record, this student record also we are able to retrieve. So we are able to call our repository methods, data repository methods, in order to perform operations with the Redis server. Similarly, can we call delete method also? Can we retrieve the record based on the ID also? This operation already we know. Repository, if you understand, save method, save all method, delete by ID, delete all, find by ID, find all, these methods already we know. Can we write a method to retrieve the record based on the student ID? Can we write a method for that? Yes, we can write. What is the logic for that? Find by ID. The logic is find by ID. I want to delete one record by using student ID. What is the method for that? Delete by ID. I want to delete all the records available in the database. Delete all. We can call the repository methods to perform all the CRUD operations. Okay. So with this, we are able to understand how to set up Redis database in the cloud, how to communicate with that Redis database by using Spring Boot application. So here in the Redis configuration class, the Redis URL, username, password, we are configuring in the Java application. Can we remove from the Java and can we keep in the YML file or properties file? Yes, we can remove these things from the Java program. We can keep them in the properties file or YML file. From there, we will load those values and we will use those values here. How do we do that? So let me go to my properties file. Let me go to my properties file. Here I will configure redis.springdata.redis.url username, password. Directly the properties also available. Spring.data.redis.url is available. Spring.data.redis. port is available, spring.data.redis.username is available. Okay, spring.data.redis.password is available. Earlier we used it to specify spring.dataSource.url, dataSource.username, dataSource.password. What is the meaning of data source? Data source means database configuration. So Oracle, MySQL, H2, those databases information we will configure. Now I am not using that database. I am using data Redis. Redis URL, Redis port number, Redis username, Redis password we have to configure. Now from this Redis config, let us take this URL and let us configure that URL here. Take the port number 10332. Let us configure that port number. Username, which is default. Password we have configured here. Password we have configured here. Data Redis URL, Redis port number, Redis username, Redis password is available. Now what I will do here, in order to read that data from the properties file, I will declare variables. Private string URL, private integer port number, private string username, private string password will be available. Private string password will be available. But where is the actual URL? Where is the actual URL? URL comma port. Here what you need to specify? Username. Here we need to specify password. That's it. So earlier we have hard coded the URL, username, password in our Java application. But it is not recommended to hard code the URL, username, password. Why? Because tomorrow if I want to connect with another Redis server, I need to change my Java project once again. I need to recompile and I need to redeploy my Java application, which is not recommended. So that's why I'm declaring the Redis configuration inside my properties file. You can keep that in the YML file also, no problem. Now I want to read this value based on this key. Key is available and value is also available. Based on the key, if you want to read the value, you can use one annotation called @value annotation. In the Spring framework, there is a annotation called @value annotation. What is the meaning of @value annotation? What is the meaning of @value annotation? It is going to read the value based on the given key available in the properties file or YML file. So this is called field injection. I want to inject the value to this variable based on the key. Where is that key available? Key available in the properties file. Same concept we will apply for the remaining variables also. That's it. Now we are able to remove hard-coded properties in our configuration class. Spring.data.redis URL, Redis port, Redis username, Redis password. Redis port, Redis username, and Redis password. That's it. Okay, fine. Here I am creating Redis standalone configuration with the URL comma port number. I'm setting the username and password. Then I'm creating client configuration object. With the server configuration, with the client configuration, we created connection factory. So that connection factory will represent connection with the Redis server. Good. So look at this. What is the change from previous program to this program? We are just making our application loosely coupled with the Redis server. That's it. Stop this one. Go to our application, refresh, Maven update the project. Okay, let us run once again. Run as boot application. Yes, our application started now. clear the console. Application started, clear the console. Go to the postman, click on send, get request to send. Am I able to get the data now? Yes, I'm able to communicate with the Redis database and I'm able to get the data. So let us go and send another post request, body with 103. Instead of John, let's go with some Charles. Send the request. Student is saved. Get request. Now we can see that there are 3 student records are available. So we are able to persist the data permanently in the Redis database. So our application is able to communicate with the Redis database. We are able to store the data and we are able to retrieve the data also. Are you clear? Good. Look at this Redis config. Remaining things are already we know. How to create a class, how to create a REST controller, how to create a repository. What is the new here? The only new thing, configuring Redis server properties here. Configure the Redis server properties here and configure the Redis configuration class with the JD's connection factory. Configure JD's connection factory. That's it. In this JD's connection factory, here we are doing server config. This is our server configuration, server URL, server port number, server username, server password. This is our client config. Okay. So with this server configuration, with this client configuration, we are able to create JD's connection factory. With the server configuration, with the client configuration, we are able to create JD's connection factory. To create that JD's connection factory, the server details we are loading from the properties file by using @value. So what this @value annotation will do, it will take the data from the, it will check for this key in the properties file. It will load the value for that key. It will store that value into our variables. Those variables we are using for server configuration. What is the meaning of server configuration? Server configuration will represent where our Redis server is running. My Redis server is running in the cloud. In the AWS cloud, the Redis server is running now. So we are able to connect with that Redis server by using our Spring Boot application. Are you clear? Good. So what is the procedure we have followed to create Spring Boot with a Redis application? Spring Boot with a Redis Cloud DB. Spring Boot with Redis Cloud DB. What is the first step? Set up Redis Cloud database. Okay. Then after this one, create Spring Boot application with below dependencies. So what are the dependencies we used? One is Web Starter, second one is DevTools, third one is Data Redis, fourth one is Redis Client. Okay, so we created Redis Cloud Database, then we created a boot application with the below dependencies. Then the most important part here, configure Redis DB server details in application.properties file. Configure Redis server details in the application.properties file. Okay, then fourth one, create Redis config class. Create Redis config class to build JD's connection factory. To build JD's connection factory. Then fifth one, create binding class for data representation. Then sixth one, create repository for CRUD operations. So we are using CRUD repository. Then the seventh step, create REST controller with required methods. Then run the application and test it using Postman. So this is the procedure we have followed. Could you please read the steps now? Set up Redis cloud database, create a boot application with the below dependencies like WebStarter, DevTools, and Data Redis and Redis client. Configure Redis DB server details in application.properties file. Create Redis config class to build Redis connection factory. Create one binding class for data representation. Create repository for the CRUD operations. I'm creating a CRUD repository. Create the REST controller with the required methods. Then finally, run the application and test it by using Postman. Are you clear? Good. So I will push this project into my GitHub repository. Then you can see this one. Let me do this.
Excuse me, sir.
1 minute, sir. Yeah, GitHub repository got created. Let's go to our workspace. This is the application. Let me go to Git Bash. I'm pushing my code to the GitHub repository, guys. Copy this one here. That's it. Okay. So whenever you are configuring, you need to configure your Redis URL, port number, username, and password. Okay. Good. Yeah. Code is pushed to the GitHub. Yes. So this is the code. Copy this URL. I'm giving this Git repo URL. This is our GitHub repository URL, which is used to communicate with the Redis database. You create your Redis database in the cloud and you configure your details, your Redis server details in the properties file that I am using here. Okay, good. Fine. So with this, we understood what is Redis, why we are going for the Redis, and how we are going to communicate with the Redis. Now, one Redis server is available. We are able to communicate with the Redis server. What about other APIs, guys? Another microservice also can communicate with the same Redis server now. Another microservice also can communicate with the same Redis server. So what configuration is required in other microservice? Same. Redis config class we are going to create. So in the microservices, duplicate configuration problem. We already discussed that. With the microservices, there are some advantages available and there are some disadvantages also available. What is the advantage? Loosely coupling, easy maintenance, technology independence. Fine. Now, there are 3 APIs available in our application. All these 3 APIs want to communicate with the Redis database now. What we need to do? In all the three microservices, we need to configure Redis server details and we need to create Redis config class in the three microservices. Then all these three microservices will communicate with the same Redis database. Got it? Fine. So with this, we understood what is Redis and why we need to go for Redis. We discussed about config server. What is the meaning of config server? What is the meaning of config server? Config server is used to externalize. Config server is used to externalize configuration properties of our application. Then we have seen Redis here. What is the meaning of Redis? What is the meaning of Redis? Redis is a distributed cache. Redis is used as a distributed cache. We can use Redis as a database also. Next one, Kafka is available. Kafka we will discuss later point of time. Kafka is a message broker, but for the Kafka configuration little challenging part, we are also going to run Kafka by using Docker. Okay, directly running the Kafka is challenging part here because we need to run some Zookeeper servers and Kafka servers to set up the Kafka cluster. That is difficult manually. We need to set up that Kafka by using Docker. Then we can develop a application which is going to communicate with the Kafka. Kafka we are going to use as a message broker. Message broker means one application will be sending the data to another application by using Kafka as a mediator. Okay, so we'll take separate session to work with the Kafka. So from this diagram, what is pending? Only Kafka part is pending. That we will see at the end of the course. We'll take separate class for Kafka sessions. Fine. Next. So what else that we need to discuss here is we need to discuss one concept called circuit breaker. We need to discuss one concept called circuit breaker. Circuit breaker in the microservices, that is very important concept. After the circuit breaker, we are going to learn Spring security. Spring security, we need to learn how do we secure our applications. Okay, so once this part is completed, there is the topic, the Apache Kafka is available. Before that, we are going to learn Docker. Once you are clear with the Docker, then we will learn Kafka for that. From the Docker, we are going to set up the Kafka. We will learn the Kafka tool. So once Kafka tool is done, then next one, we are going to learn JUnit for the unit testing. How do we perform unit testing for the REST APIs? By using JUnit. Then after, the association mapping topic is pending from the data JPA. So I will explain that topic also. Association mapping. Association mapping topic is pending from the Spring Boot course. Anything else is missing? Any other topic?
Spring Batch.
Spring Batch framework. Yes. How do we work with Spring Batch to perform bulk operation?
Validation is also pending, sir.
JWT token will come under Spring Security. Saga pattern will come under Kafka. Yeah. Batch, I have added that. Saga will be covered as part of the Kafka and JWT will be coming as part of Spring Security. Maven tool. Maven already I
Jenkins,
explained, right? Right.
Spring profile.
Profiles concept also I have already explained. In the data JPA, I have explained the Spring profiles.
CI/CD Jenkins.
Jenkins CI/CD pipeline. Yes, I will show you how to deploy a project by using Jenkins with Docker integration. How do we create the CI/CD pipeline to deploy our application by using CI/CD pipeline with the Docker? Jenkins with the Docker integration, I will show you.
Sir,
Kubernetes
Spring
and Docker
AOP
basics
notes.
you're going to cover, right?
Kubernetes will not be covered in the Spring Boot, sir.
Sir, Spring AOP notes.
AOP notes, I will check it once, sir. Maybe it is available in my previous laptop. I need to check once that.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
In JRTP, Kubernetes is going to cover,
Yes,
right,
sir.
sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Spring Cloud, sir.
Spring Cloud, already we are using microservices with the cloud only, right?
AWS, right?
Not AWS cloud. Spring Cloud is different. That is
can
what
we learn here?
PN client we
sorry.
are using, Eureka server we are using. Okay, these all are the Spring Cloud API gateway. These all are the Spring Cloud concepts only.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone
Validations.
application
Validations, I will
with
show
the
you one validation example also, sir. Bean validation you are asking. Okay. IntelliJ
anyone client
IDE. Okay, I will use that, sir. Sorry?
anyone application with the front end client like using the new technologies like
Integration with
React, Angular or React JS, something you should mention.
Yeah, Angular integration. So if you guys know the Angular, then that's fine. I can take one class for Angular setup, one class for Angular integration. I will show you one example with the Angular integration also.
Sir, what about Sonar Cube?
Sonar Cube, I already explained Sonar Cube in the JRTP, sir. Sir, all the tools
yeah,
are not part of the Spring Boot. So if you see the course content document, whatever the tools mentioned there, I'm going to cover. In the JRTP, we are covering all the real-time tools. That is a separate batch.
Okay.
Yeah. So you please check the course content document. Whatever the tools I mentioned for the Spring Boot, those tools I'm going to cover.
Redis without cloud also you are going to cover, no?
Which one?
Just now we say with cloud, no?
Redis
Without
database.
cloud.
You can run without cloud. You need to download the Docker, and with the Docker you can run the Redis server. I will show you that also. How to set up the Redis in the local directly with Docker without using cloud also. Just if you run that Redis in the local, then what will be the difference? Here URL, username, password, port numbers will be the different. Only this configuration is going to change. Now guys, here where the Redis server is running on the cloud. Tomorrow, if I don't want to use Redis on the cloud, then if I set up the Redis in my local, do I need to change anything in the code? No. Where the changes will be available? These properties are going to be changed. You don't need to change anything in the project source code. You just need to change the URL. Instead of this URL, then what we are going to keep as a URL, if it is in our local machine, local host will be available. When you run the Redis in the local host, the port number for the Redis will be 6379. That is the default port number for the Redis server. And Redis username, Redis password we are going to configure. So we are setting up Redis server in the cloud. So we will configure the details there. If you run the Redis in the local, you need to configure the URL as localhost, port number as 6379, username and password we can set up for that. Got it? So this is the change that you need to do when you are running the Redis in the local system.
Sir, for Linux and AWS concepts, GRTP people should join AWS batch. Or?
No, I will update that, sir. Not immediately. I will check whether I need to take separate classes or you need to merge with that existing DevOps batch. I will take a decision and I will update you.
Okay.
Sir, one question, sir. Like, are you going to take the DevOps batch or someone else?
Yes, sir. We have already announced my schedule. So what are the new batches that I'm going to take? So if you see, my Spring Boot microservices new classroom online training batch will start from coming Monday at 9:30 a.m. IST. Same day, evening at 8 p.m. IST, my DevOps with AWS batch is going to start. From 21st February, Java real-time project batch will start at 7:30 a.m. IST. These are the 3 new batches I'm starting this month.
Okay,
so
sir.
you can
I'll be
update to your
joining
friends
DevOps.
who are looking for that.
Okay, sure, sir. Thank you.
In real-time development, how we use database means we are using cloud-based database or a local database.
Sorry, can you come again?
For real-time development, what type of database we are using, like cloud
in
database?
the real time, we are going to use the cloud databases. Sir, in the real time, it's again depends on the project, right? Some companies will go with cloud infrastructure. Some companies will go with on-premises infrastructure. So if it is a startup company, if they don't have a budget to pay the cloud bills and all, they will set up the database also on their own machine and they will connect to that. If the company is having a budget from the client, then they will go for the cloud database. So in the AWS cloud, they will create a database and Spring Boot application will communicate with the cloud database.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
And how we can
Sir,
One
like
by one.
sir,
sir.
in Redis case, a small question is there. In an interview, they asked like if your microservice is calling your Redis case and every day 12 p.m. or night you are updating your data, but in whole days some data is updated in the Redis DB, then how microservice got to know that data is updated or not?
If in the Redis cache data is updated, how your microservice will be notified that
Got to
there is
know.
an update in the database.
Yes, after that, how is going to face them?
So my Redis server will not send any update to our microservices. Microservices should query the data to get the latest data only, sir. How Redis will not, maybe you can configure some events in the Redis. Whenever there is a data update, it can trigger one event to our application. So let me check it whether we can configure any triggers like that on the database. In the normal database,
Yeah,
you can
because
configure a trigger, but in the Redis, is it possible or not? I need to check it once.
okay, actually, in
Yeah,
current project scheduler is there, but when I told scheduler is there, but whole day when data is updated, then that time it's a problem, right? So
Yeah, let
how
me
you
check
guys are,
that once. Yeah, is there any trigger that we can send? I will see.
yeah.
Sir, actually, cache will
correct.
improve the performance, right, sir? But
Correct.
here, how that is, I mean, we just did some CRUD operations, but how that will
There will be a
improve the,
annotation that we configure cacheable. So same data every time it is not going to fetch from the database. I will show you that scenario.
okay.
If you are using the data JPA, for example, Oracle, we are using along with that one, we are using the Redis. We are using the cloud repository. No, that time how we configure both that Oracle and real database and this Redis.
I did not get your question.
Our application will communicate with the Oracle or MySQL, that is real-time database.
Right.
Along with that one, if you want to communicate with the Redis,
Both
how
connections
we
we are
develop that?
connections we are going to configure, right? So here the entity classes will be different for the database and the binding classes will be different for the Redis. Repositories also will be different.
That means we need to create
Two.
separately.
Separately we have to create for that.
Okay.
Sir, in real time, do we use the database triggers for updating data in Redis cache?
We can do that. If you want to do the updation, you can do it by using the trigger concept.
Okay.
so why we are not moving the connection properties here to the external config server?
We already discussed config server. Now we can configure that
Why,
one.
why we are not moving? Why we have not moved in this case?
Sir,
In this current example today.
Current example, this application is not registered with the config line. This is an independent application I have developed.
Okay. Just for the demo purpose, right?
Yes, right.
Can
If you
you
want
check
to
the
read it from the
GitHub?
config server, again, we need to start the config server project. We need to create one YML file. This application should act as a config client. So every time for every application developing with all the microservices, time taking process. So that's why this project I developed as an independent application. Config
Sir,
server
once
concept
all
already we
topics
covered.
once all topics completed, just show me the one application to integrate all the tools at a one project after completed all this.
We already done that, na sir. Already, apart from this Redis server, everything we have integrated in one application already. Apart from this Redis server, we have already integrated that and we developed the application. If I develop once again, also same thing, same setup.
Okay, that means
You can practice that. You can try that once.
Yes, I tried all these things apart from the config server.
Yeah, apart from the config server, we tried all these things.
So can you take GitHub as well?
GitHub already I have. So whatever the tools you are asking, madam, Maven, GitHub, Sonar, and all these all are part of Java project batch. We already completed those tools. So this is Spring Boot microservices course. For this, we have already defined the syllabus. So whatever is there in that, we are going to cover that. If you want to learn the GitHub, already my GitHub videos available in the YouTube, 4 or 5 classes available. If you go through those videos, you can understand. My GitHub playlist is available. I will share in the group.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So if you know the Angular integration, it is same for React also, or it is somewhat different?
I did not work with the React, sir, so I will show you how to integrate with Angular.
Okay,
And
sir.
sir, what is sir L1 cache, L2 cache? The question asked in interview.
L1, L2 tick, I will explain that. Okay,
Sir,
generally,
Java 8
basically,
features.
session and session factory will be available when we go for Hibernate. So there we will call L1 and L2 cache. I will have a discussion on that.
Redis is using L1 or L2?
That is not related to this Redis, sir. L1, L2 comes into picture when you are using Hibernate in the project.
Okay, so second level and first level cache are not linked to Redis.
Right.
Hello, sir.
Sir,
Yep.
can Redis database stores millions of records?
Yeah, you can. So you can scale up to any point. For
So
that, you
can
can
we-
go for enterprise
In-
edition.
So can
In
we say,
AWS,
sir,
right?
If you want to store millions of records in the Redis database, you need to use enterprise Redis, not the free Redis.
Okay.
So the infrastructure is required to maintain that data, right? So that you will
Yes,
get with the paid version, not with the community version.
sir, through AWS
So
and Docker using
Redis,
database.
that free one, it's for any limitation is there, like AWS for 1 year only? it's
Limited size will be available. RAM size will be very less. But this is just for practice purpose, for learning purpose, not to use in the real time. If you want to use in the real
there
time,
is
then you need to go for enterprise
restriction, right?
edition.
We can use
Yeah,
for 2-3 years, right?
correct.
sir, can we say Redis is a substitute for database, Oracle database?
You can use this as a database, but we can't say substitute, sir. The purpose is different with the database and Redis, right?
But we are using it for storage purpose also, no,
We are
sir?
using it for storage purpose only, but the database in the database you have some concepts like procedures, triggers, views. You can create lot of things in the database, but in the Redis you can't do such kind of things. It is just to store the data in the form of key and value. In the database you can do a lot more things.
Sir,
But in the Redis, only store and retrieve the data. That's it.
Sir, Redis is SQL or NoSQL or some key value pair structure?
It's key value. It's not related to SQL or NoSQL. Redis will have its own language.
Sir, is it possible to store the data in Redis forever?
No.
No,
It's
Redis is a
cache, right?
cache, right? It's not
Cache, yeah.
forever caching. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Sir,
not
sir,
forever.
wherever static data is there, then we should go for Redis.
Yes, we can maintain that in the Redis.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
We are configuring database properties in properties file or YML file in real time, but they are not configuring properties or YML. They are configure that in environment variable. How can do that?
Environment variable, if you are configuring, that means they will have a Kubernetes concept to pass these environment variables to the Docker containers in the runtime.
Okay. Are we going to learn that? We will learn that in future.
Kubernetes is not part of this course, no?
Okay.
The first level case and second level case is not supported by Spring Data JPA.
No, sir.
No.
Sir,
No.
Sir, can we mention Spring Data JPA instead of Hibernate in the resume, sir?
Yeah, you can
For
specify.
experienced persons.
Yes. Nowadays, people are not using Hibernate directly, sir.
Hibernate JPA they are not using, no?
Hibernate they are not using directly. They are using Spring Data JPA.
So we can mention Spring Data JPA.
you can keep Spring Data JPA in the resume, no problem.
No Hibernate. Okay, sir.
Yep.
Sir, if we update YML files in GitHub, the config server will automatically pick up those values.
Yeah, config server will pick up automatically. There is a one refresh actuator endpoint is there. You need to send a post request to the refresh endpoint, then it will update automatically.
So all the files will be updated at once.
Yes, right. Server will be restarted. Config server will be reloading the data.
Okay.
All right, guys, good. So with this, I'm stopping for today. We'll meet in the evening session for JRTP. For Spring Boot, tomorrow morning we'll connect. Tomorrow morning, we are going to learn about circuit breaker concept in the microservices. Thank you, guys.